All right, so let's continue to put this process into practice. And I provided you an example here, and then after this, we'll go ahead and look at our problem number 2 for the day from the textbook, okay? But the first thing we want to notice about this argument is that it's a categorical syllogism. You want to make that determination right away. We have each of the claims here beginning with the words all, no, or some. And so as you remember from the counterexample method process, the first thing you want to do then is identify the conclusion. And so we see that word thus way over there being our conclusion indicator. And so we can know here that that's the conclusion. We're going to now take the argument's form. We're going to extract the argument's form. So we get all P, all plankton, are photovoltaic creatures. Well, we can't use P again, right? So choose some other letter. It doesn't really matter what letter you choose here. I'll go ahead and use V. All P are V. Second premise. Some photovoltaic creatures, so some V again, are reptiles. So R. Draw a line separating the premises and the conclusion. And so we get thus, no plankton are reptiles. All right. So we'll move that out of the way, have more room to write here. So, a couple of things to observe here. When it comes to the exam, you will see this kind of problem on there, and I will assure you now and on the exam that this is definitely an invalid argument. The original argument is definitely invalid. You won't have to worry about it possibly being valid. For sure, it will be an invalid argument. And so we will begin the process. Again, I like to make a little note, true, true, false there to remind myself I need to make substitutions that are going to make the premises true and the conclusion false. And then as we can see here, we're going to need to make substitutions for P, R, and V that are going to make, again, the conclusion false and the premises true. So we look at the conclusion here. No P or R. No P or R. I want to warn you, and this is why we looked at 3.2 before we got to 1.5, right? In 3.2, you learned about how we would describe this kind of categorical proposition, this E proposition here, as a negative proposition. And what I want to tell you is that anytime your conclusion is negative, so it would be an E statement like this, or some are not, right, an O statement. Anytime your conclusion is negative, when you make substitutions for these letters here, be extra careful that, in fact, your conclusion turns out to be false. I will just warn you that in my experience, when the conclusion is negative, people often plug in things for those values there, or those letters, and they end up coming up with a true statement because that negative aspect of that statement kind of flips things around in their mind, I guess is the way to put that. So we'll be extra careful here. We need no P or R, and we need to find something that's going to make that a false statement, right? And in this case, if we said, for example, cats and mammals, right? What we're saying there is no cats are mammals. Of course, that's not true. Every single cat is a mammal, and so that combination works. Now, we need to turn to the premises. All P, all cats are something that has to be true, and some of those things have to be mammals. Well, we could, for example, take felines, right? Let's see what we get. All cats are felines. Well, that's true. Every single cat is a feline. Some felines are mammals. Now, that's curious, right? That might strike you a little bit differently, I guess we could say. Some felines are mammals. Well, we have to remember that the word some, as we know, means, and this is, again, why we looked at 3.1 and 3.2, but especially in 3.1, we learned that some means there is at least one. And so what we're actually saying here, then, is there is at least one feline that is a mammal. Now, we know that every single feline is a mammal, yes, but it is true, nonetheless, that there is at least one feline that is a mammal. And so this fits our pattern, right? So this is just a good way, and you know that I provided you with these substitutions on the PowerPoint slides, but this is a good way to show that this is definitely an invalid argument using the counterexample method. Now, I should also mention here that when it comes to the exam, right, I'll give you an argument like you saw on the PowerPoint slide. just a second ago. And in order to do the counterexample method, what I will require you to do is show the argument form like that. You don't have to indicate true, true, false if you don't want to, but certainly show the argument form, and then you will need to just lay out the terms I'm supposed to substitute there to make all true premises and a false conclusion. If you wanted to go beyond that and actually write out these sentences with these substitutions in them to perhaps confirm in your own mind that you've got all true premises and a false conclusion, you are by all means welcome to do that, but you don't have to. This would be sufficient, in other words, to do the problem correctly. Okay? So with that, we can look at one more example here. This would be our problem number 2 for the day from the book, which again is on my iPad here. And so that number 2 problem here from 1.5, right, the first set of exercises there, we have some evolutionists are not people who believe in the Bible, for no creationists are evolutionists, and some people who believe in the Bible are not creationists. There's a lot going on in there. Of course, we can recognize that it's a categorical syllogism, and in fact, all of the exercises from the first set are categorical syllogisms. It isn't until you get to the second set of exercises that we see hypothetical syllogisms. So just be aware of that. Do them all, though. It's good practice. But we need to find the conclusion and the premises. And so we look for an indicator word there, and we see, I hope, the word for. And so for means because in this context, and that tells us no CRE, no creationists or evolutionists would be one premise. Some people who believe in the Bible are not creationists, right? Don't let that copula are or are not trip you up here, right? And again, this is why we looked at chapter 3 a bit before we got to this. And so our conclusion then, right, comes before the premise indicator, meaning we get some evolutionists are not P for people who believe in the Bible. Some evolutionists are not people who believe in the Bible. We're going to make substitutions to make the premises true and the conclusion false. And so we can have something for E, P, and C to plug in there to make that happen, right? I'm going to start in the conclusion. Some E are not P. And again, we can recognize that that is a negative statement there, so we've got to be extra careful when we plug stuff in to make sure that that is, in fact, false. Now, I'll just tell you here as I'm working on this, I'm going to do this on the fly here as I'm working with you. So we wanted to start with, I don't know, something simple, right? Cats, right, is a nice simple thing. Some cats are not what? Mammals, right? That's also simple. It's worked well for us before. Some cats are not mammals is false. Every single cat is a mammal. We go to our premises. No C are cats. We need to find something where it's true that none of them are cats. And at the same time, it has to be true that some mammals are not whatever that C thing is. Some of these substitutions are more difficult than others, but I think in this case, it's not too bad, right? Dogs will work nicely here. We get no dogs are cats. True. Some mammals are not dogs. That's true. Lots of mammals are not dogs. So we get all true premises and a false conclusion, and we have done the counterexample method correctly. Now, of course, in doing these videos, right, in kind of having an idea as how to do them beforehand, I've certainly made it appear that these are not that difficult. I will tell you that when I work on these problems with a face-to-face I let the students, of course, try and work this out, and oftentimes you run into problems. That will happen. Again, when that happens, you simply can rearrange the items. That works sometimes. Or you can try a new set of substitutions to come up with the right combination of all true premises and a false conclusion. But hopefully you'll be able to do that fine, and there are lots of exercises there from 1.5 to work on, and you want to do that to get ready for the exam here coming up.